Well, the standard question up here is, how did you find your way into your current role?
I hustled my way. So I am a production executive at a company called Automatik, which is an independent production company. And I was 30 when I shifted my careers from science in Melbourne, Australia, to wanting to be a producer in Los Angeles.
Wait, you were in science?
Yeah.
What were you doing in science?
I worked at Monash University.
Okay, yes.
In a science outreach where I taught children, teachers, the general public, and created programs and outreach programs to translate research to and scientific principles to a language and a method that was understood by all.
And then at 30 you were like, I want to get into motion pictures.
Correct.
Go for you.
I mean, whatever floats your boat. But I decided when I was 30 I was going to do that, and I didn't know anything about it other than little bits and pieces that I'd done at university. So I applied to a producing program at USC, which I kept reading about on the internet. I was like, oh, it sounds like pretty good, and they're like, oh, we're so good. I'm like, all right, well, I'll apply.
That's USC in a nutshell.
Okay. So I applied, and I got in. I was very lucky, and I thought, oh shit, I better do it. So I moved to do that program, and while I was there, I used that network at USC to make as many contacts, do as many internships as a mature age student. And when the program was over, I literally, using all of those connections that I had, hustled my way into a job that was an assistant job, but it was to the president of the company in an indie place where I knew it was promotable. And I knew I only had to do it for a year or so. If I did it well, potentially, if I, luck and all that sort of stuff. But I knew it was a good position, so I hustled into it. And then I got promoted. And then I was much better at doing that job than being a horrible assistant.
And that was Automatik?
And that was Automatik, and then it just, you just keep going and going and going and going.
So your day job now is, how would you describe it?
I would say my title is production executive,
right.
But I'm kind of like an in-house producer for the company on the features side. And so the last... it's hard to explain my day job because or what I do each day, because the last year or so, I've been on set for about 7 months of the year on 2 different features outside of LA, and in between, and then I'm in post on 2 of them, and one of them we're printing the master this week.
Oh yeah,
which is so exciting. Finally. So it changes because I'm so project based. It changes. So when I'm in pre-production, I'm in pre-production on that project. And meanwhile, all throughout that time, I'm always in development on something. I'm probably having to oversee delivery on a movie, a different movie as well, or in post-production. Hopefully, it's the director's doing the cut while I'm in pre-production on something else, and I don't have to pay attention to it so much. So, and then at the moment, I'm in development on this many features and only in post in 2.
So the 2 that you've been on set, did you find them, or did they? I mean, how do
I did not find those.
So do they get assigned to you?
Yeah. So it's a combination of things that I've either brought in, or things that have been assigned to me. So the head of the company, there's 2 heads of the company. The partners of the company are both producers in their own right, but they also do not want to go to New Zealand for 4 months, and they do not want to go to Ireland for 4 months, or Colombia, or all the places that I get sent. And also they cannot, and that's a good, I know, it was pretty great. I've got to be honest, I'm very lucky. But at the same time, they are the heads of the company, and they are the most powerful people in the company, and they have great relationships with high-level agents and high-level creators, and they get sent things that are in a great position to get financed, and they're good at doing that. So, but they can't do it for every single project that they take on. So that's why there are also people like me. So I can bring them in stuff and say oh, I think we should do this. It's great because blah blah blah. But other times they're like, I have 12 movies, 3 of them are going. You need to go produce one for me. Okay.
Okay. So what's the state from your perspective of the indie film world? Because it's it's
Does
transitioning.
everybody want a drink?
Because we're going through. I hear from various people that it's shifting a lot from even the way they get funded. Like it used to be all pre-sale, international pre-sale. You could get a film up, and that's sort of going away. And obviously the places that films are shown now is shifting. And someone said the other day that like UK theatrical release is dying rapidly because people aren't going to see movies in England anymore, and that used to be a big market. So what's going on?
Well, the market is the worst it's been in that respect. The traditional indie film market is definitely the worst it's been.
Traditional funding?
Traditional indie funding, which is the pre-sales.
Does everybody know what we're talking about with pre-sales? No? Shaking some heads? Do you want to explain quickly?
Sure. So,
sorry, just pick up.
I'll do it really quickly. So, you need to finance a film production-wise, right? And where do you get the money? There's different ways. And one of them is you get tax incentives, and that's your soft money, and you get a loan against it, and that goes 30% of your budget maybe, right? You get some equity, but they're not going to spend like $10 million in equity or whatever your budget is. Like usually that's a lot of risk, right? It's a lot of investment. So they'll say, yeah, we'll do like 40%, or for example, that's also quite high. But then you've got 30% where they're like, okay, we need to pre-sell this movie before you make it in order to greenlight it, where a sales agent comes on board and goes to market or goes to all the buyers around the world and sells each territory of like, I've got this great Neil Armstrong movie and it's going to be great in Germany and here's the price you should pay for it. And they have all these estimates, right? And they can go and pre-sell it, or they can, if they're a well-established company, they can pre-sell some, and then they have the estimates of the other, and you use that as collateral to take on a loan to fund the rest of that 30%. Yeah?
Yeah. So Germany says we will pay this much for this finished film, and then we hope to make our money back from. Do they actually ever pay it?
They pay a deposit,
Okay.
but they don't pay up front. They pay like what 10 to 20% deposit. So you can get, if you're selling the world for $1 million total in a small film, for example, then you will get, say, maybe $100,000 to $200,000 that you can funnel straight into production if you want to. But then you've got to use, those papers that like says, oh, we sold it for $1 million between all those territories, and get your loan of $800,000 from
a bank or a finance.
Fulcrum if you're in Australia.
Right. And so that's dying.
A little bit, because the market's so terrible. So like what you used to be able to sell, like even a horror film or something like that, internationally across the world, you could sell for $2.5 million. It's like now, it's like, I don't know, $1 million. I made those numbers up, but it's really bad. And it means that people don't want to fund films, not necessarily in that way anymore, because you're not getting the budget, like you're not able to make the film for the budget that it requires because the market is telling you it's not worth enough, which is not true. It's just like, oh, it's very complicated. There's streamers, people are not going to the box office, it's so expensive. There's, all of those things that you're aware of.
So where are you finding your money?
It's a good question. We make a lot of films per year. The company I work at makes a lot of films per year. And like this year, I think we'll make 7.
Awesome.
2 years ago, including some of the films that we did not lead produce, we just took a step back and we helped we'd help package or something, but we were not on set. We did 21. And there were fewer people at the company. It wasn't ideal. And somehow it happened, and somehow we got through it. And they weren't all good films, unfortunately, but because I don't think you can do that, they'll all be good films. Wasn't our intention. But 7 films is a lot. But it's harder. I think that shows you it's harder to get some of these films up, some of these indie films up. So we are doing, I did do a film that was an independent model, but I also did I did an Orion film, which is the smaller, low-budget genre part of MGM, that are almost sort of they're functioning somewhere between if you worked with a streamer that gives you that budget, it's not an MGM budget, it's Orion budget. So it's sort of taking what would be an indie, traditionally could have been an indie script, not a big studio one, and you doing it at a slightly higher budget than the indies, and having a big release. It's like using the studio. Yeah, so there's some of those, not a lot. We're lucky because we've got good relationships with them. And then it's like trying to take advantage of the streaming wars that are coming up.
So, because I heard we had someone we had Alex Walton who's now at Endeavour.
We love Endeavour.
Right. And he said there's money out there. It's just you've got to be much more specific about what your script, what your audience is, and where it's going to fit in the. Because it's the landscape is shifting. It's not the way it used to be.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there's a lack of money for a decent script. It's just you just have to look for it in different places. So, is it
That's
that?
Good.
Is
That's
that
good to hear that from the head of sales.
right? Well, he was here. You can watch the video. I'm not making it up. But he. So I mean, is it? So is it? Because I'm confused too, because we're all getting bombarded with, there's a million new outlets for content, and this is the content gold time.
Yeah.
And yet, so it's not the content gold time for independent film, or is it just that they're not looking for that? Or
I think you're right. You're right. So I say it's terrible and it's dying because I feel like you cannot make the kind of films that we were making 10 years ago in this model.
okay,
There are probably more films being made as indie films, not pre-sales probably, but as indie films. But they're not often, because the risk for selling them later or upfront is so much higher of getting like what you want to get in return. They're wanting to do everything at a lower budget and a lower budget and a lower budget, and they've been saying that for as long as I've been in the industry, right? And they've been saying that, we've been saying that for years, and like, well, it's getting more and more and more so, because I can even tell you that a budget, like some of the films that we were like, we made that for $6 million 5 years ago, they're now saying, if it's an independent one, you really need to be, unless you get a big movie star, you really need to be looking at like 3.5 to 4. Like, can't.
right.
It's not like the script won't let me do that unless I.
Well, that was you very conveniently led me to where I was going about that from the writing point of view. If we want to write independent films, should we be just writing cheap independent films?
No.
So what advice do you have for writers writing scripts now? I mean, how do you get? If the indie world is your baby, where you want to be, and let's face it, not many of us are going to be writing Marvel movies, and that's the studio. I mean, we're either writing for Disney or we're writing independent films. Isn't that kind of where it's at? What's
No, but like
no, but it's
there's an essence of that.
right. But if we want to try to generate our own project and get our own project up, are there types of projects that we should be looking at?
High concept projects. Because the idea, especially if you're going to sell it, from my point of view, if I'm going to go in and sell, this is the only way to make a movie. I have to sell it. I have to go to a financier and I have to sell it and convince them to spend their money on it, whatever structure that is, right? And especially if it's someone who's fresh and an exciting voice, which is exciting, but they don't have a proven track record, or they don't have the big agent behind them that's like, pushing them and you want to do them, like all those things, then you better have that really cool high concept that is, one, in vogue with what's going on in the industry, not necessarily what's being released worldwide, but what's going on in the industry, and what has a hook that I haven't seen before. What is a fresh take? Are they an auteur? Are they somebody who is it, think about, did anyone see Mustang? No. Okay, did anyone see Raw? Yes. So that was a crazy commentary. This is it was a lower budget, but a crazy grotesque commentary through carnivorous body part kind of, which is disgusting, but it was a high concept because it was a message about female sexuality. Right? That's crazy bananas. I haven't never seen that before. That film was an international film, but people really responded to that. That's a high weird concept. So I would say your idea is almost a little bit more important than the execution. The execution should still be good, the writing has to be good. But if it's not absolutely perfect, that's okay. if the idea is that strong and the person reading it can see a way to sell it and can see a through line to get to develop it with you. Because I can get a script that is beautifully written from somebody who I know you're talented, you're a lovely person, I met with you in general, and this is a beautiful script. But it's a slightly tired idea, or we've done a few of those, like, or it's just not, I know the market doesn't want it, I have to pass.
Any genres in particular right now? Like you said, be aware of what the industry's doing.
Sci-fi, always sci-fi.
Always sci-fi?
Always room for sci-fi. Generally always room for horror. There are always buyers for horror. I would say that I feel horrible saying this because you were like what you said earlier. It was like the executive says, "I need you to write a romantic comedy."
No.
Don't write what the industry is telling you. But
but trend what they're looking for.
But they're looking for romantic comedies are actually kind of popular on streamers only. Sexual and psychological thrillers are also, like, single white female is a thing that people are really excited about reinventing a new version of and making that contemporary, because we haven't seen that for a while, and for some reason the buyers are like, yeah, people want that. And by the way, if you hear like this is like Black Swan, or it's single white female and it's a resurge of that and it's all these things and it's female gazy, like you're like, oh, okay. Who here isn't intrigued by what that looks like now? You know?
Post Me Too.
Exactly.
It just sounds like a PC nightmare.
No, it's going to be amazing. The female, most of them have a female gaze.
Okay.
Which is very cool.
What's the lag time between when you said don't go with what you're seeing, but what the industry's doing, and what's the best place to find what the industry's doing? How do you go about?
I think you just have to talk to people who are in it.
And read trades, do you?
Read trades, 100% read trades.
Okay.
Read Deadline every day. That's the best one for that for sure, because that tells you what's set up where. Sometimes those announcements come like 6 months later, obviously, or whatever. But that is definitely the best way with talking to people, because I'm from Australia, right? And I go home and I do business at home as much as I can, and which is not as often as I would like, right? But I get scripts from Australia and they're people, because they're so far away, every now and then there's somebody who's like pitching me something. I'm like, yeah, but that idea was so cool 5 years ago. And it's not, and it's just like, and it's really like, they're really talented and it's a great script. I'm like, yeah, but like that robot idea is tired now.
I'm not writing a vampire movie anytime soon. Right.
Probably not.
Right.
Unless it's a fresh take on it.
Right.
And then people will be
single white female vampire movie. Yeah. There it is. It's okay. So trades. What about? What advice do you have for writers who might be reading Deadline and they're looking at all these sci-fi movies and they're like, "Fuck, I don't write sci-fi." Do you teach yourself to write sci-fi, or do you just work on your own craft and just hope that you'll come up with something that?
100% work on your own craft, because I think, because you know when you write something that doesn't feel genuine to your artistry, it doesn't work. So I think even if it's like coming of age stories is what you do super well, they're very difficult to get made, but that's okay. If you find a way into it through, I'm going to use, I want to say magical realism, but that's not what you should do if you're not into sort of sci-fi. But if you find another way into it, then that can get you noticed. Or you can use that initially use it as a sample and see what else people talk to you about. Do they want something that's a broader comedy? And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think I could write a broader comedy because no one wants this expensive, but people want, Netflix wants broad comedies.
Do you ever hire writers to do rewrites and stuff?
We do, yes. Not often. We mostly come on spec scripts, but we do, yeah. It's not like we don't have a fund for development money, so we have to find it. We have to go out to our people and say, yeah, we're going to pitch this to you and try and find development money. So, it takes us a little bit longer.
Right. But you mentioned spec scripts, so you read spec scripts?
All the time.
What advice do you have about those, about writing spec scripts? What are red flags for you in the first 10 pages that you might be like, nah, they don't really know what they're doing, or yeah, they really do?
I personally, not everybody will say this, but personally, if the opening is a white guy in bed in a kind of shitty apartment and the alarm is beeping and he gets up and he's like, you know, I'm
Did
like...
you read my tweet? I tweeted that out about 2 weeks ago. I was
Oh,
like,
did
for
you
God's
really?
sake, because I've been doing the script reading.
Yeah.
Like, for God's sake, don't introduce your character waking up in bed, rolling over and turning off the alarm.
Yeah.
It's like, please, I read like 150 scripts and probably 30 of them introduce the lead character that way. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, like, that is an immediate...
Oh my God. But that's what I was saying about the power you have. You have absolute power onto how we meet your characters.
Yeah.
The first time we meet them is absolutely under your control.
Yeah.
100%. Do not settle for what you've seen in a movie, please. Or him waking up in the morning and turning off the alarm. That tells us nothing. And then someone tweeted, a friend of mine in Australia, Dan Illich, I don't know if you've bumped into him, he's a satirist. He wrote, Groundhog Day was his response. I was like, shut up. Right, carry on, sorry. Yeah.
So I would say red flags that I look out for, if I can't figure out who the character is or what their purpose is in the first 15 pages to 20 pages, I start to lose interest. If the writing is really, really good, or I know who the writer is, I'm like, oh, I probably should keep up, then I might. I would say I want to know my world. I want to know what film I'm in. If I don't, and it's unclear after 15 pages, I get very, very frustrated. And then I'm like less likely, even if I keep reading, I am less likely to be on board. So I want to know, I want to be clear of time and place and world. And I want to feel the tone, and I want to know what movie I'm in. Yeah. And if I can't, that's a red flag to me.
All right, so we should all still keep writing. How many specs do you read on a regular basis?
I am so physical production focused in the last year. So if I'm development focused at that given time, I would say a minimum of 10 per week.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But how many of those would you finish?
2.
Right.
That's not, and then that, like, I probably wouldn't do too much more than that, because then I have drafts that I have to give notes on that I have to read.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions before we let you all go from this sweaty spot? Everybody's hot and tired. Like, fine, my career is hopeless. I'm going to go get a job at Whataburger in Texas.
How did it feel transitioning from like science and reading these like deep research papers into like reading scripts and reading a different sort of structure that helped you?
I think it was exciting, but I would say that I was at school for 2 years. I was at grad school for 2 years, so I was learning the craft of it. So that's why I found it exciting, because I actually took my science brain and went into script analysis in a way where I understood the rhythm and I understood the 3-act structure and all the things that surrounded that and were within that in masterful scripts. And now I know, like, I have a paradigm. This was taught to me by a professor. I have a paradigm that to me just makes so much sense, that I use as a way, if a script is not working for me for some reason, I can use that as a way to like figure out why. And not every script should follow that. Masterful scripts and great films often don't, but it's a great basis to know. So I actually really got excited by it because I put a science, I had someone help me put a science behind it, and I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah.
Ed? Yep.
And it is still true, you can't sell a spec script, because I can't give my spec script to you without the manager or somebody giving it to you. So the first move for somebody that isn't a manager, agent, and really the agent comes later, get the manager, somebody in the industry, to give it to you or give it to any of the production companies.
Correct.
How low down the ladder do you have to go for a production company to read your spec script without that industry endorsing person?
I think it depends on the company. Most companies require somebody to send them who's a rep, and part of it is like a litigious thing. Because I remember when I was in school, my first semester here, I had this template given to me as an intern at a company I was at. That was just like, these came in the mail. Can you reply to them with this template that actually says, unfortunately, we're not allowed to look at your materials, because if you feel that anything that we make is similar, and there are so many similar scripts and similarities within scripts that are just by chance, and that they'd get into trouble. So there was another reason to not read them. I think it depends on the company. There are some like little indie companies that probably would. I don't know. But I think, I think the other thing is like, if you can do it in the most respectful way, like I've definitely read scripts from somebody who was like my friend's brother, and they've read it first and they're sort of in the industry and they're like, look, it's genuinely really, 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 really good. I'm like, okay, I'll read it for you. Like that happens too, but I think it's just, you have to.
But did it turn out to be really, really, really good?
Sometimes though, I think that can happen. This is not exactly that. Like, it wasn't really, really, really good. It was good, but it wasn't a sellable idea, right? So there's examples of people who are assistants who want to be writers, and a lot of them get their, like, suddenly they're a writer because they work as an assistant in somewhere in the industry, and they build a relationship with somebody enough that, like, they're like, yes, I will read your script.
Well, that's what David Benioff did with his assistant for Game of Thrones. In the panel with Boston last week, they said that. He was like, yeah, I gave my assistant 4 scripts, and apparently the room was like, what? Game of Thrones? So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And does winning these, I won a lot of contests at these film festivals, not any of the big ones, but does that help at all?
Yes.
To say it's won this, that, or whatever?
Yes.
Depends on the contest, though.
Yes. Nichols, yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
We just got, I want to blow my own horn, because, I do the Right LA thing. We're about to announce our finalists. I just got an email from Paramount Players, which is like the indie version, Paramount's indie wing. The coordinator guy, like the assistant to the development guy, is reading a couple of our finalist scripts. And he's like, he reached out to us and he said, I want to read, because he read the log lines, I guess. And these guys didn't even win. And one of them he's read, and he emailed me today to say he's going to start a conversation. Yeah, so
totally getting into labs.
Yeah,
I know Sundance Lab is like so hard to get into. By the way, we worked with writers who like got rejected from them, so it's like doesn't matter if you are. But like Austin Professor has great writers thing. But what you said about the assistant, there are so many literary managers and agents who have assistants that are dying to sign clients or hip pocket them for when they get promoted, and then they'll rep you and they'll start repping you while they're an assistant, and that's a dream scenario because they're so invested in selling you and making it work, and they probably will read, like, they're not going, they'll read it, they might not read it, I don't know, maybe they will, if you get connected with them through a way that they feel is, they trust that person, they'll probably read it.
Well, this guy's reading, and I get this variety movers and shakers thing every week, which is like jobs, what's going on in jobs, and who's moved to who. Every week, an assistant is moving into an agent's role, and they all, they do have, So that's why I always say, be nice to assistants. It's absolutely true. Yeah. All right, I think it's time for bed for everybody, right?